I ruined your display. Now help me with my new project!
Your project? I know you're just exaggerating, and I'm done helping out.
The morning my sister destroyed the business I had built with my bare hands, she stood in the wreckage, smiled, and told me I should thank her. 3 days later, my parents asked me for $28,000 to save her life. There was only one problem. She was not dying. She was planning to buy a new face with my money. Hello, my name is Claire Bennett. I am 36 years old, and until last winter, I believed being a good daughter meant quietly paying for everyone else's mistakes. I live outside Portland, Oregon, where rain can fall for a week without seeming to stop. For 9 years, I ran a small weekend stall called Claire's Hearth at the Riverside Market. I sold handmade candles, soaps, knitted scarves, and little gift boxes filled with local honey and dried flowers. It was not glamorous. I woke at 4 every Saturday morning, loaded folding tables into my van, and worked through cold rain and summer heat. But the stall was mine. Every shelf had been built by me. Every label had been designed at my kitchen table. Every customer had come through trust, patience, and years of work. The stall also paid for far more than my own life. 5 years earlier, my father had suffered a mild heart attack. He recovered, but his medical bills and a bad refinancing decision left my parents close to losing their home. I stepped in. At first, I promised to cover the mortgage for 6 months. 6 months became a year. Then 2, then 5. Every month, I transferred $2,100 directly to their lender. I also paid their property taxes twice and replaced their furnace. My parents always said they would repay me when they were stable. Somehow, stability never arrived. My younger sister Vanessa was different from me in every possible way. She loved expensive restaurants, designer bags, and posting photographs that made her life appear richer than it was. Her husband Trent called himself an entrepreneur, although his businesses rarely lasted longer than 6 months. Vanessa had always treated my market stall like an embarrassing hobby. "You smell like cinnamon and goat soap," she once said at Thanksgiving. "When are you going to find a real career?" I reminded her that my hobby paid our parents' mortgage. She rolled her eyes. "You always have to make everything about money." That was Vanessa's talent. She could take the truth, turn it upside down, and make the honest person feel ashamed for saying it. The trouble began when Trent decided he wanted a stall at Riverside Market. His newest idea was a luxury protein drink called Titan Fuel. He had no health permits, no insurance, and no finished product. He had printed shiny banners before learning the market had a waiting list. He asked me to give him half of my space. I said no. My stall was only 10 feet wide. Food and cosmetic products were regulated differently, and sharing space could have violated my lease. I explained all of that calmly. Trent stared at me as if I had insulted him. "Family helps family," he said. I almost laughed. That sentence was only used in my family when somebody wanted something from me. Vanessa called that evening. She did not ask, she accused. "Trent finally has a real opportunity, and you're blocking him because you're jealous." "Jealous of what?" I asked. She paused, unable to answer. Then she said, "If you don't make room, don't blame us when things get uncomfortable." I should have taken that threat seriously. The following Saturday, I arrived at Riverside Market at 5:15 in the morning. The sky was still dark, and a light rain was falling. As I turned toward my usual row, I saw wooden boards scattered across the pavement. At first, I thought the wind had damaged someone's display. Then I saw my painted sign broken in half. My shelves had been pulled down. Nearly 400 candles lay crushed among broken jars. Bottles of oil had been emptied across my tablecloths. My card reader was smashed. Boxes of soap had been soaked in a bucket of dirty water. In the center of it all stood Vanessa and Trent. They were putting up a black and gold Titan Fuel banner. For several seconds, I could not speak. I could only hear rain tapping against the metal roof and broken glass grinding under Trent's shoes. "What did you do?" I finally whispered. Vanessa turned toward me with no surprise on her face. "We cleared out the junk," she said. "The market needs something modern." I looked at her, waiting for a laugh, an apology, any sign that this was a horrible joke. None came. Trent pointed at a pile near the trash containers. "You can probably salvage some of it." I walked toward my cash box. The lock had been forced open. Almost $600 in change and emergency cash was missing. "Where is the money?" I asked. Trent shrugged. "Maybe you misplaced it." That was when the market manager, Louise, came running down the aisle. He took one look at the wreckage and called security. Vanessa suddenly began crying. Not quiet tears, a full performance. She said I had invited them to share the stall, and then changed my mind. Trent claimed my shelves had collapsed while they were moving them. Both insisted the damage was an accident. Then Vanessa stepped close enough for only me to hear. "Do not make this ugly," she whispered. "Mom and Dad cannot handle another family crisis." I stared at her and understood something I should have learned years earlier. Vanessa did not fear hurting me. She only feared consequences. Fortunately, the market had security cameras. The recording showed Trent cutting the small padlock on my storage cabinet at 4:37 that morning. It showed Vanessa throwing my products into plastic bins. It showed Trent smashing one shelf with a mallet after it became stuck. It also showed him taking the cash from my box and sliding it into his jacket. Lewis banned them from the market and advised me to call the police. I did. When my mother learned what had happened, she did not ask whether I was safe. She asked whether I could keep Trent out of jail. "He made one bad decision," she said over the phone. "He destroyed 9 years of work. Things can be replaced, Claire. Family cannot." I looked at the broken sign lying across my kitchen floor. "Then why does this family keep trying to replace me?" She went silent for a moment. Then her voice became cold. "You're being dramatic. My father called next. He said Vanessa was under stress, and that Trent had invested all their savings in Titan Fuel. He asked me to withdraw the complaint and file an insurance claim instead." "That would be fraud," I said. "It would be mercy," he replied. I refused. The estimated damage was just over $14,000, not counting lost sales. Because Trent had taken cash and entered a locked storage area, the police treated the matter seriously. For the first time in her life, Vanessa could not talk her way out of what she had done. 3 days later, my parents arrived at my house without warning. My mother looked pale. My father held a folder against his chest. They sat at my kitchen table, and Mom began to cry. "Vanessa needs surgery," she said. The word surgery pushed everything else from my mind. What happened? My father opened the folder, but kept the papers turned toward himself. He said Vanessa had a serious condition that had been getting worse for months. If she did not receive treatment soon, there could be permanent complications. Despite everything fear moved through me. Vanessa was selfish and cruel, but she was still my sister. I did not want her to die. "What kind of surgery?" I asked. Mom squeezed my hand. "It's private." She's ashamed. "Which hospital?" Dad answered too quickly. "A specialist clinic in California." "How much?" He finally looked at me. $28,000. I pulled my hand away. That amount was almost exactly what remained in the business emergency fund I had spent years building. Mom said they had already emptied their savings helping Vanessa with tests. Trent's business money was gone. The clinic required payment before scheduling the procedure. "You are the only one who can save her," Mom whispered. The timing felt cruel and suspicious, but illness does not wait for family arguments. I asked to see the estimate. Dad closed the folder. "What promised Vanessa privacy?" "You are asking me for $28,000. I need to know where it is going." Mom's tears stopped almost instantly. "How can you talk about receipts when your sister is terrified?" I offered a solution. I would pay the clinic directly after speaking with its billing office. My parents exchanged a glance. It lasted less than a second, but I saw it. Dad said the clinic offered a discount only for a cash transfer. Mom said questioning them proved I cared more about money than family. Then she used the mortgage. "After everything we're going through, you wouldn't abandon us too, would you?" There it was, not a request. A warning. If I refused Vanessa, I would be called heartless. If I questioned the story, I would be accused of endangering my parents. They had built a trap from guilt and expected me to walk into it. I told them I needed 48 hours. That night, I studied the 3 pages my father had briefly placed on the table. I had taken photographs when he went to the restroom. The letterhead read Westlake Advanced Surgical Center. There was no doctor's name. The phone number led to a recorded message. The address appeared to belong to a medical office complex in Beverly Hills. I searched the clinic's website. Its services included facial contouring, rhinoplasty, the breast augmentation, liposuction, and cosmetic dental packages. Nothing on the site suggested emergency medical care. My stomach tightened, but I did not jump to a conclusion. Cosmetic clinics sometimes perform reconstructive procedures. I needed proof. The next morning, I called the clinic. Because of privacy rules, the receptionist could not confirm whether Vanessa was a patient. I asked a general question about emergency surgeries. She sounded confused. "We are an elective cosmetic practice," she said. "We don't provide emergency procedures." I thanked her and ended the call. My hands were shaking. Still, I wanted the complete truth. I called my cousin Brooke, who had always been close to Vanessa. I did not tell her what I suspected. I only asked whether Vanessa had been ill. Brooke hesitated. She told me not to say anything. "Please, Brooke. Is she sick? Sick. No, she's excited. That single word changed everything. Brooke explained that Vanessa had been planning a total transformation for months. She wanted a nose job liposuction, new veneers, and a luxury recovery suit. She believed the makeover would help her become a lifestyle influencer. Trent planned to film the process and use the attention to promote Titan Fuel. I felt as if the room had tilted. Where did she say the money was coming from? I asked. Brooke became quiet. Then she said, she told me your parents had an investment that was finally paying out. There was no investment, there was only me. Brooke sent me screenshots from a private group chat. In one message, Vanessa had written, Claire will pay once mom tells her it's medical. She can't say no without looking like a monster. In another, Trent wrote, after the makeover, we relaunch. Her candle money is finally going towards something useful. The final screenshot was worse. My mother had reacted to Vanessa's plan with a heart emoji. I sat alone at my kitchen table for almost an hour. I expected rage, but what came first was grief. My parents knew. They had sat inside the house I was paying for, looked into my eyes, and told me my sister might suffer permanent damage. My mother had cried. My father had held fake medical papers. They had used my love as a weapon because they believed it had no limit. That afternoon, Vanessa called me. Her voice was weak and theatrical. Mom said you know about the surgery. Yes, I replied. I hate asking after everything that happened, but maybe this is a chance for us to heal. I almost admired the cruelty of that sentence. Send me the surgeon's full diagnosis, I said. She began to cry. I knew you would humiliate me. What condition do you have? It's complicated. What organ is being treated? She hung up. 10 minutes later, Mom called and shouted that I had caused Vanessa a panic attack. Dad texted that I had until noon the next day to transfer the money. I did not argue. Instead, I opened the locked drawer in my office and removed a blue folder containing 5 years of mortgage statements, tax receipts, repair invoices, and bank transfers. The house legally belonged to my parents. I had no ownership interest. Years earlier, they had promised to add my name to the deed in exchange for my help, but they never did. I had continued paying because I believed keeping them safe was more important than protecting myself. Now I understood that my payments were not saving them. They were protecting them from the consequences of choosing Vanessa again and again. I called the mortgage company. Since I was not a borrower, I could not change the loan, but I could cancel my automatic payment authorization. The next payment was due in 12 days. Then I called my attorney, Maya Chen. She had been helping with the criminal complaint against Trent. I sent her the screenshots, the fake estimate, and the messages from my parents. Maya told me not to transfer a cent. She also warned that presenting false medical documents to obtain money could create serious legal trouble. We arranged a family meeting for Sunday afternoon. I told my parents I was ready to discuss the money. They invited Vanessa and Trent. They thought they had won. When I arrived at my parents' house, Vanessa was sitting on the sofa under a blanket. Her face was bare of makeup, and she had created dark circles beneath her eyes. Trent sat beside her with one protective arm around her shoulders. My mother rushed toward me. Did you bring the cashier's check? I held up a small envelope. I brought what you need. Everyone relaxed. Dad told me he was proud that I had found my heart. Vanessa reached for the envelope. I pulled it back. Before I hand this over, I want you to explain the surgery one more time. Vanessa looked at Mom. Mom said, this interrogation is cruel. Then it should be easy to end. What is the diagnosis? Trent stood. Give her the check. I placed my phone on the coffee table and played the recording of my call with the cosmetic clinic. The receptionist's words filled the rooms. Elective procedures, no emergency surgeries. Vanessa's sick expression disappeared. Next, I laid out printed copies of the group chat. Claire will pay once Mom tells her it's medical. Her candle money is finally going toward something useful. My father read the pages twice. For one hopeful moment, I wondered whether he had been deceived too. Then he sighed and said, it is still surgery. That was the moment something inside me became completely still. You knew? I asked. Dad avoided my eyes. Vanessa's self-esteem has been very low. You told me she could suffer permanent complications. A mom stepped between us. Emotional suffering is real, Claire. I looked at the 4 of them. Not one apologized. Not one seemed ashamed. They were only angry that the lie had failed. Vanessa threw the blanket aside. You have the money, she snapped. Why do you care what I use it for? I nodded slowly. Thank you for finally telling the truth. Then I opened the envelope. There was no check inside. I removed a set of house keys and placed them on the coffee table. Mom stared at them. What is this? The spare keys you gave me 5 years ago. A dad frowned. Why are you returning them? Because I no longer need access to a house I do not own and will no longer support. Silence filled the room. I explained that I had canceled the automatic mortgage payment. I would not pay the property tax, insurance shortfall, repairs, utilities, or any other household expense. The payment due in 12 days was theirs. My mother's face turned white. You can't do that. I already did. Dad stood so quickly that his chair struck the wall. We will lose this house. Then sell it. I said. You have equity. Move somewhere you can afford. Mom pointed at Vanessa. She needs us right now. Then support her with your money. Vanessa shouted that I was punishing our parents over a misunderstanding. I turned toward her. You destroyed my business, stole my cash, and planned to steal my savings. That is not a misunderstanding. It is a pattern. Trent moved toward me, but I did not step back. You think you're better than us because you sell candles, he said. No, I think I'm finished financing people who despise me. I told them my attorney had copies of everything. If anyone used another false document or tried to access my accounts, she would send the evidence to the authorities. Then I walked out. My mother followed me to the driveway, calling my name. For years, that sound would have stopped me. This time, I opened my car door. Claire, please, she said. What are we supposed to do? I looked back at the home I had kept for them, month after month, while they mocked the work that paid for it. The same thing you always expected me to do, I said. Figure it out. The next several weeks were chaos. My parents called relatives and claimed I had abandoned them during Vanessa's medical crisis. Vanessa posted a vague message online about jealous family members attacking women for improving themselves. Then Brooke released the screenshots. The story changed overnight. Relatives who had criticized me began asking my parents why they had lied. Vanessa deleted her post. A trend's few remaining Titan Fuel supporters disappeared after the security footage from the market became part of the public court record. My parents missed the mortgage payment. Then they missed the next one. They could have used their retirement income to pay, but that would have required cutting Vanessa off. Instead, they kept sending her money for rent and legal fees. Finally, the bank issued a formal notice. My father called me in tears. He said the house contained 32 years of memories. So did my stall, I replied. He had no answer. They listed the house and moved into a smaller 2-bedroom rental. After paying the remaining loan and expenses, they still had enough money to live safely if they budgeted. It was not the disaster they had described. It was simply a life without me absorbing every cost. Vanessa never received her makeover. The clinic canceled her tentative date when no deposit arrived. She and Trent separated a few months later. After blaming each other for the criminal case and their financial problems, Trent accepted a plea agreement requiring restitution, community service, and probation. Vanessa also agreed to repay part of the damage and complete community service. I did not ask for prison. I wanted accountability, not destruction. The market community helped me rebuild. Lewis found me a temporary corner near the main entrance. Other vendors donated shelves, jars, and tablecloths. Customers who heard what happened placed so many online orders that I had to hire 2 part-time assistants. 6 months later, I opened a small permanent shop near the river. Above the door, I hung the 2 broken pieces of my original sign, repaired with a bright line of gold paint. I kept the crack visible on purpose. On opening day, my father came alone. He stood near the doorway, looking older and smaller than I remembered. He said my mother was not ready to speak to me. Then he handed me an envelope containing $500 toward what they owed. It was not much compared with the years of payments, but it was the first money either parent had ever voluntarily returned. I told myself you were strong enough to carry all of us, he said. The truth is, I was too weak to tell Vanessa no. I did not forgive him immediately. Forgiveness is not a switch. It is a road, and he had only taken 1 step. But I thanked him for telling the truth. Vanessa wrote to me once. Her message was not an apology. She said I had ruined her future and asked whether I was happy. I considered replying with a list of everything she had done. Instead, I wrote 1 sentence. Your future was never mine to finance. Then I blocked her. Today Claire's hearth earns more in 1 month than my old stall sometimes earned in 3. My parents manage their own bills. My father sends a small payment whenever he can. My mother and I speak rarely, and only when she can do so without blaming me. I still love my family. That may be the most difficult truth of all, but love does not require unlimited access to my money, my work, or my peace. For years, I believed the keys to my parents' house proved I belonged there. In the end, returning those keys did not make me homeless or heartless. It opened the door to the life I should have been building all along. My sister thought she had destroyed my little stall. All she really destroyed was the lock on the cage I had mistaken for a family. And once that door opened, I never stepped inside again.